Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, has officially joined the New York gang war, and his presence could turn the tide of battle for any one of the major factions, but whose side is he on? Well, let's hop into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 41 and find out. So then, picking up directly where the last issue left off, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, had finally made his major play in the gang war, agreeing to a sit-down with Lonnie Lincoln Tombstone. Fisk isn't alone either, as he's come to the party with his mutant wife Typhoid Mary, as well as a small army of Hellfire Club henchmen, because, well, he's the brand new White King of the Hellfire Club, in case you didn't know. At first, it seems like Wilson might actually be on the side of Tombstone and Spider-Man, trying to end the war with as little bloodshed as possible, but once he realizes that his son Richard Fisk the Rose is in the running to become the brand new Kingpin of New York, he's very quick to back family. I would obviously remind Fisk that he actually has two sons involved in the gang war, but I guess he forgot all about Butch Ferris, his illegitimate kid, who he had positioned to succeed him as the Kingpin at the end of the last Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run. But you know what, I guess judging by the little maps they have at the beginning of each of these issues, Butch hasn't actually managed to get any territory for himself, so I guess Wilson felt he needed to back a winner. If that felt like a bit of a long diversion that didn't actually have much to do with the story itself, it's because the bulk of this issue is basically just Kingpin fighting Tombstone, while on the exact opposite of town, the Beetle, Tombstone's daughter Janice, ends up actually duking it out with Richard Fisk the Rose and his muscle digger. I'd say the story is pretty thin. I think they're trying to go for this whole juxtaposition thing here where you have two generations of Fisks fighting two generations of Lincolns, and each side also has their own unique Gamma person in the form of She-Hulk and Digger, which I didn't even clock until this issue kind of inadvertently pointed it out to me. They also really build up Digger as a massive threat in this issue, and I mean, yeah, I guess he is basically a black market Hulk, but I mean, if Spider-Man can beat him, I think the Sinister Syndicate should be able to beat him easily enough. And hey, speaking of Spider-Man, and this is still technically his book in name only, if nothing else, you'll know that one of my major criticisms for this Zeb Well era of Spider-Man is that Peter himself just kinda disappears into the background of his own stories and doesn't really have a lot of agency. Well, you won't believe it, this issue not only addresses that fact, but actively makes fun of it. In fact, there's a running gag wherein Spider-Man keeps trying to get a word in edgewise during the whole big Tombstone versus Kingpin fight, only for him to get shrugged off at every turn. Moreover than that, Spider-Man gets stuck on henchman duty fighting the Hellfire Club goons, who have to be maybe the most disgusting henchmen in all of Marvel Comics, while She-Hulk gets to have a much more interesting battle against Typhoid Mary. And don't worry your pretty little power scaling heads out there, Typhoid Mary is sure to make a big song and dance about how during her time on Krakoa she was sure to grab some adamantium for her swords, making it a much more even fight between her and She-Hulk. Beyond that, the only other thing of note is we discover in this issue that apparently Silvermane and Count Nefario weren't actually killed by Madame Mass, she's keeping them alive, and even using their unique insight to try and help her win the war itself, which I mean, okay, I guess, but also, wow, has no one actually died in this story yet? Has nothing actually mattered since it began? Yes. In the end, Janice the Beetle ultimately ends up winning her battle against the Rose handedly by seemingly crushing his head, or at the very least crushing his trademark shades. I guess this is supposed to further cement her trip to the dark side and the embracing of full-on villainy by killing a guy. That is, of course, if he's actually dead, because as we've already seen with Silvermane and Count Nefario, I don't actually trust when anyone is supposed to die in this book anymore. Janice's victory ultimately ends up being very short-lived too, as her and the Sinister Syndicate get rushed by another group of individuals with high-tech armor and weapons. A new faction of goons who we seemingly haven't seen before, but apparently are actually connected to Kingpin, as Kingpin and Tombstone put their own fight on pause for a minute, so that Wilson can take a phone call before gleefully announcing that it's over. Whether he means the fight with Janice or the entirety of the gang war, I guess we'll have to check back in next time to find out. And so that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 41, everybody, and I dare say this issue, if nothing else, is probably the greatest definition of what a 5 out of 10 really means. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, but man alive, is it weird that this late in the event and we're having completely disposable issues wherein basically nothing happens from start to finish. Hell, the book sells us on getting to see Kingpin versus Tombstone, a guy who's basically always been the big boss of bosses versus a guy who started out as supervillain Muscle before eventually becoming a boss himself, but the fight is left completely open-ended with no real winner actually crowned, which is a shame, especially because it looked like Tombstone was going to dig that much deeper to try and win the day if it meant saving his daughter. He bites Wilson, that's something. But that's really about it. I guess there's a funny bit in this issue too, with Spider-Man and She-Hulk unsure about who Typhoid Mary was flirting with in an attempt to get inside their heads. But that is, again, literally all Spider-Man gets to do in the book called Amazing Spider-Man. If nothing else, it seems that Zeb Wells is acutely aware of all the criticism that I and others have been throwing this run's way, and now he's just leaning into it. And you know what? I hope he runs with it. I hope it becomes the hallmark of this series moving forward, that Spider-Man literally cannot get a word in edgewise in his own book. If it's gonna be bad, if it's gonna be disappointing, at least it might as well be funny. At least it might as well be winking and nudging at the reader. Like I said, this is the definition of a 5 out of 10. Inoffensive for what it's worth, but also completely and utterly forgettable. I'm glad I recorded this video right after reading it, because if not, I would not have been able to recall any of the events that happened in this book. Which is a shame, because issue 40 I actually found a little compelling. Here's hoping that they can get back on their feet and actually end gang war strong, because God knows, starting 2024 off with another truly disappointing Spider-Man event would be a bad look, as the kids say. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Jewel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Jewel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me and the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.